Hey, Scribe, welcome. You know what it is? It is Wednesday. I'm about to get y'all this free class right here. We're going to talk about some writing and specifically about ideas. Okay, so today is about 6 ways to find story ideas and a little bit of dialogue to boot. But before I get into that, let me introduce myself to the newbies. So I am Taiia Smart Young, the face behind this page, and my passion in life, my inspiration is to teach you guys, the newbie writers, the newbie authors, how to create influence, impact, and income with your work. So if you are a writer, a poet, you write screenplays, you are an author, or aspiring to be any of these things, guess what? Ideas are our bread and butter. That's how we make things. We need ideas to create, and then we need to be able to sell it, monetize it, and give it to the world. Because guess what? This thing here we do is not free. I don't care who's asking. It's not free. We're trained professionals. We've studied. We've taken some classes. We need to be paid for our work. And guess what? I have some t-shirts to attest to that fact. And I'll be talking to you guys about that sometime soon. So do me a favor. For your friend who is working on something and may be stumped and needs this little bit of information, share this video. And if you guys are watching the replay or watching live, go ahead and give me some love and like this page. Just so I know that you guys are there. And for the replay, I do come back and answer questions later on. So we have about 315 people who are rocking with us on this page. And that's incredible because I started with zero, nothing, and just kind of got on hand, didn't know what I was doing until I figured out, you know what, let me focus and let me give you guys some real information. So for today's class, we're talking about ideas. And so this was inspired by Jordan Peele. Hey, Ann, this was inspired by Jordan Peele's movie, Us. And so everyone's talking about it, right? And it got me to thinking that not only do I admire the way Jordan Peele crafts a story and he layers the information and how he develops characters, but I just appreciate where he comes from in terms of fresh ideas or being inspired by other ideas. So if you guys are fans of Jordan Peele, then you know that he is coming out with a remake of The Twilight Zone. So that got me to thinking, like, listen, networks, Hollywood, everything that is put out and consumed is not always a fresh original take. Sometimes it is a complete reboot, a remake, something that we've seen before. So if you think of, like if I think of my favorite television shows, if you think of The Cosby Show, what did The Cosby Show have? A spinoff called A Different World. If you think of Buffy then had the spinoff called Angel. So the first thing that you need to think about in terms of looking for ideas is, can I spin off of something that already exists? Somebody already went through the trouble of creating something. Is there a way for you to now come along and create something fresh from this particular idea? I love Grownish. Where did Grownish come from? Grownish came from Blackish. It was a chance for one of the characters to break out and now have the entire show be about her. She's now, Yahara Shahidi is now the star of Grownish as Zoe. And we're obsessed with this show because now we get to see how this young woman behaves in college versus just her being the daughter in this family that is focused on Dre and Rainbow, right? Think about, Broadway. Wicked. Wicked was a spinoff from The Wizard of Oz, right? Who knew that there would be a whole story about how the witches came to be, specifically how the Wicked Witch came to be, right? Did we even care about that before? No, we were obsessed with Dorothy and the Ruby Slippers. So Wicked gives us a chance to now focus on this new character. This is what a spinoff does. Oh, and even let me not forget with books. Thanks for the love. Let me not forget with books. I don't want to say this sister's name wrong, and I met her too. I think it's eBay Zobi. She did a remake of the book Pride and Prejudice, and her book was called Pride. She recast all the characters as characters of color. The main character was Afro-Latina. And what else did she do? Oh, she put it in a modern context. So she took what was already there and gave it new life in terms of it being relevant for us today and being relevant for people of color specifically, right? All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, eavesdropping. Or as I like to call it, plain old fashioned plain old-fashioned listening. So listen, there's a difference for me between being curious and being nosy. A curious person just wants to know more. Nosy people, they might want to know more just for the gossip aspect. A curious person, which we all have to be as creatives, we want more information so that we're well informed and we know what we're doing. And that really takes a place in your storytelling. So if you don't like to eavesdrop, and you don't have to, you could be sitting in Starbucks, you could be sitting in another coffee shop, in an elevator, going to your doctor's office, and you'll overhear conversations and little snippets of conversations and dialogue that can be inspiration for a story that you want to write. Or if you're like me and sometimes you just want to see someone else has already done the work for you. So if you guys don't know, I mentioned this before, that I follow Overheard in New York and Overheard in LA and London and Overheard at University on Instagram. And so someone has already done the work for you. They've done the listening. And so what these pages do is they've taken snippets of conversations and posted it on Instagram for your entertainment. Now, I find these highly entertaining, but I also find them inspirational because you can find dialogue for your characters, or you can find a seed of a story in something that someone said and you want to spin it out. So like, for instance, one of the things that I just recently read was there was a psychic. There was a young woman passing by with her girlfriends, and there was a psychic that yelled to her, "Honey, you need to leave him." And the girl turns around and says to the psychic, "I'm a little bit of a hoe, so you need to tell me which guy in specific I need to leave." That was perfect dialogue. Like, that inspires stories about relationships. It inspires stories about sex. It inspires stories about being a single girl in the city. What other thing that I see here? I'm just looking at my script. Oh, there was a conversation between two women. Hey, Ashley, welcome. There was a conversation between two women, and one says to the other, "Oh, he's awake. And he's always awake. I think he's a vampire." And then the other person says, "No, sweetie, he's a cokehead." So that could be a potential for a story about two friends talking about drug addiction. It could be, no, you need to leave this guy alone. You don't need to date him. So always be on the lookout. Listen, pay attention for potential either story ideas through conversations that you hear, or just conversations that you hear that may be inspirational for your dialogue. Let's see. Number 3, keep an idea notebook. I talked about this in the last live stream. Idea notebooks or files or your Evernote or your Google Keep. Listen, that's gold in there, because sometimes the stories that don't make the light of day, they can really inspire something else. So I don't ever suggest throwing away old notebooks or journals, because I think these are artifacts as writers. They tell so much about who we are, the frame of mind that we were in at the time when we wrote the idea. And I have plenty of stuff that I will just not give up and get away from. And then, you know, the story may not have worked at the time, but now you're at a place where the story is going to absolutely work, because maybe you're a stronger writer, or maybe you're like, you know what, I don't work for the police anymore, the police force anymore, and I can actually write about what it was like being a white cop policing in Black and brown neighborhoods, and what I was, you know, charged with, or how I had to evolve and learn the community, etc. Things like that. So don't ever throw away journals. Don't ever throw away notebooks. Be sure to always keep an idea file and keep that going. Social media. And please feel free. Hey, Nancy. Nancy says my hair is gorgeous. I'm giving a little bit of, you know, a little bit of salt and pepper today, a little asymmetrical situation going on. Thank you, Nancy. So number 4 in our 6 juicy ways to find ideas for our stories. Number 4, one of my favorites, social media. I talked a little bit about listening to conversations. And if you don't want to listen, you can follow Overheard in New York on Instagram or Overheard in LA. But social media allows you to be part of the conversation, to be part of the story, right? So think about what happened with Jordan Woods and Tristan Thompson, that whole situation. When people started to tweet and create memes, they give you even more fuel for stories that you may want to write. So one of my favorite things that was written during this whole Jordan Woods and Tristan situation was from a writer named Clarkeisha Kent. She referred to Tristan's penis as Groupon peen. Like, that thing got retweeted so many times. There were so many people who were laughing and co-signing what she was saying. So this, again, social media can give you the opportunity to find an idea. So maybe you want to write a story that's about infidelity. Maybe you want to write a story about two friends who are fighting over one particular guy. There's just so much there to develop. And it's not just Twitter, it's not just Instagram. So perfect example, I was scrolling on LinkedIn, and one of my favorite things to do is follow HR people on LinkedIn and listen to and then read their comments about how interviews went. So there was this one guy who during his interview, he was plugging his mixtape. So this to me was like, okay, this guy is completely clueless. He's on an interview for this particular office job, and he's talking about his mixtape, and he's flirting with the interviewer. So needless to say, he did not get that job. So there are social cues that we need to pick up on as people. And so that can then become maybe a story for you or a character trait that you're trying to figure out how to flesh this character out. That is a way for you to do that. If you pay attention to what's going on social media, you can pick up those kind of things and add those to your character traits. All right, so number 5, this one is pretty obvious. Pay attention to what is going on in your life and the life of like 5 people around you. So did someone's kid run away? Did someone having a baby and they already got 7 kids and they don't want an 8th kid? Did someone just inherit a large lump sum of money from like an ex-boyfriend and they didn't leave anything to their children? Is someone losing their home? These are all ways for you to take a seed of what's going on in someone's life and then turn it and be creative and come up with your own story, your own version. You can build your own world, characters around this. Even if you're not doing fiction and you want to do something that's nonfiction, for instance, if someone dies and leaves money or doesn't leave money, doesn't have a will, doesn't have life insurance, that's a conversation. You can pitch a story about, how often do we need to update our wills? How much do you need to start to create a will? What do you need to even create a will? How much is it fine that I have these 12 luxury cars? Do I need to be able to leave my house to somebody? What do I need to do? So there's always a way to figure out how to use what's going on and turn it into a juicy story idea or juicy dialogue. And number 6 is last but not least, and it's my favorite. Hey, Jean. Jean is also commenting on my hair. This hair, you guys, I'm getting used to it. I put a little blue in it, and it's a little, a little different today, letting the curls rock a little something. So idea number 6 is about pop culture and news. You guys, this stuff in terms of pop culture, sometimes it writes itself. So one of my clients that I'm working with, she's working on a chick lit novel. I said to her, listen, entertainment, because her story is about the world of entertainment and publicity. I said, there's so much going on at your fingertips, like the whole Jussie Smollett situation. Now that the charges against him have been dropped, I was like, use that as inspiration for your story. You can create this character who has gotten himself into situations and it always seems to be able to get himself out of situations. So use what's going on in pop culture and in the news for your stories. Oh my God, one of the big stories that everyone's talking about right now is the college admission scandal featuring Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, and about 40 something 50 something other people who have now paid money to I guess schools and admissions counselors and insiders to help get their children into elite schools. If we're thinking about pitching nonfiction story ideas, if we want to pitch to a newspaper or a website, you can think about the people who are people of color who have changed addresses so that their children can go to other schools and then have gotten caught, prosecuted, faced jail time, did jail time, faced hefty fines, while you have these rich people over here who are now paying for their kids to get into schools, and they already have access, privilege, exposure. I mean, when the news came down, one of the celebrities, her daughter was on a yacht, right? I think it was Lori Loughlin's daughter was on a yacht when this thing actually happened. And then you have people of color who sometimes are in disadvantaged neighborhoods. They want to be able to send their kid to another neighborhood to go to a better school, and they face jail time. So that's a story idea in itself. You can find that connection between what's going on currently and what's been happening and marry those two together and pitch that story, right? So what was I saying? So the point here is to be able to look at what's going on. There was a story that I read just recently too about a Black professor at Harvard who actually is a Harvard alum, and he faced a situation when he was there at Harvard that the students would say, oh, you stole this spot from somebody. And so that seeing him on the news and reading that story, I was like, oh man, someone should really interview him and to go deeper into the story and find out how he feels about this particular college admission scandal. I'm sure he has a lot to say about that, especially since he has an Ivy League background. So there are ideas everywhere. You guys, let me see what you guys are talking about over here. Hey T, very true. She says, I write on social issues and God knows there's a lot. Absolutely. Ashley says, I'm not a naturally nosy person, or should I say curious? We say curious, Ashley, but these are things that I honestly never thought of for inspiration, great ideas. Listen, you could be in the elevator going to your doctor's office and hear something and be inspired. Listen, I write ideas on napkins. I have a whole short story that I wrote on a napkin because I was in a restaurant and I didn't have paper with me. And this was probably before cell phones. I knew it was because I would have written it in my notes app. But you have to sometimes just be ready and write it down wherever it strikes. Jean said Little Mermaid. Yeah, a little something with the hair, a Little Mermaid. Nothing any good rich parent wouldn't do. Yes, and that's the thing. That could be a parenting story, right? The lengths that parents will go to make sure that their kids have the best education, the best activities, whatever it is. If you are a parent, you are willing to sacrifice and willing to do whatever. And sometimes some people are willing to break the law for their children. So you got to think about that. Let me see. You guys have any questions before we wrap up? It's been about 19 minutes. Let me see. Oh, Jean says, I just told this story in my interview. Which story are you talking about, Jean? Hey, Brenda. Hey, Ro. Welcome. Which story are you talking about, Jean? Tell me about it. So, and tell me which one of these ideas. Ashley just mentioned that she never thought of eavesdropping or just listening as a way to come up with story ideas, but it absolutely is true. So let me just recap if you guys forgot about about the 6 ways. So first we have create the spinoff. Look at what's already in what's going on your TV, movies, books, and create a spinoff. Grownish is a spinoff of what? Blackish, right? The X-Men, didn't one of the X-Men have his own Wolverine? Wolverine got his own spinoff, right? Let's see. Eavesdropping. Pay attention to what's going on. Just listen. It could be anything. You could hear a parent talking to a child. Have you ever been in Target and listened to the way that some parents talk to their children? Ooh. People. People get real reckless in Target when they're trying to do their shopping, and their children are just running reckless. I promise you. Pay attention to Target. Pay attention to Trader Joe's. All the stores, grocery stores. I don't care where you are. Pathmark, Walmart, Kmart. Pay attention to how people talk to their children in stores when they're trying to get their shopping on. Number 3, keep an idea file or a notebook, because something that you wrote 5 years ago may not have worked then, because maybe you weren't ready to really fully explore it, but maybe you are ready now at this point. Number 4 is social media. You can take what's going on with the tweets and the memes, something you saw on LinkedIn, a story you read on LinkedIn, and really spin that out and create a story, characters, dialogue, or even something that's for nonfiction. Number 5, pay attention to what's going on in your own surroundings. How are people handling things? Pregnancies, breakups, new relationships, trying to find a relationship. What are people doing? This is all good fodder for stories. And my favorite, last but not least, pop culture. What's going on in the news? I always think to myself, when this Trump presidency is over, the amount of books that are going to be written, positive and negative, about this Trump presidency, it's gonna make your head spin. You thought there were some things about Obama. Forget it. The ones about Trump, it's going to be a lot out there. So just pay attention to what's going on in pop culture and news. And I gave you the example of the college admission scandal. Let me pop over here and see if there are any questions. Yes, Ashley, notes in the app is a lifesaver. I agree. I write everything down in my apps. Like sometimes I don't even bother looking for a pen, even though I do love the feel of actually writing in my notebook. Sometimes I just write in my notes app. The Wolverine movie sucked. I didn't say they were all gems. They can't all be gems, but listen, here's the difference between someone who wants to be a screenwriter and someone who is a screenwriter. The screenplay, the fact that they wrote it. The difference between a writer and an author, the book, the fact that they sat down and wrote it. It doesn't matter if it's necessarily good or not. It's the fact that they have gone from being a writer to an author by producing the product. And that is the name of the game. And that is why we are here. Jean says, not our kids. Now, listen, Black and brown kids, we could get a little crazy sometimes in Target, in Trader Joe's too. Is this, we got the little voice, we got the little, better sit down, right? Put that on, put the little face on, and you want your kid to sit down. Because when my son was about 3 or 4 years old, he used to love to go into the clothing stores and hide between the racks. Now any 3-year-old is going to love to do that, because guess what? It's fun giving mom terror. Okay. I just gave y'all a story idea. Losing your kid in a department store. That could be a fun little thing for your romantic comedy. We're not talking about the kid getting kidnapped, because that's a whole nother story. We're just talking about losing your kid in a department store. You will lose your mind. Okay? You'll have everyone looking for your kid, and they will help you too. I've been there. I know. I have the story. So you guys, thank you so much for rocking with me on a Wednesday, hanging out, talking about the 6 ways to find juicy story ideas and even spice up your dialogue. I will see you guys next week, Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You guys take care. Don't forget, leave questions, and I will definitely come back and answer them later. Take care.